Hi, sweet friends. Welcome back for another chapter in our story, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Yesterday, or the last time you listened in, we read chapter 20 about the amazing gum machine. Now, this was a machine that put all the colors of the rainbow plus hundreds of other colors of runny liquid through these huge glass or tiny glass tubes that went all over, and they all emptied out into a huge container as big as a bathtub. And then, once they were all done running into the bathtub, it mixed them all up. And then the machine sucked all the liquid back inside. It made a noise, and then out popped this little drawer with this tiny, gray, thin, pale strip of something. And Mr. Wonka was so excited about what came out of the machine. The rest of our visitors were kind of curious as to all the cool stuff that happened, and this is all that came out. Finally, Violet Beauregard, our lovely gum-chewing character, said, "By gum, it's gum!" And she was correct. But Mr. Wonka told them it's not just any gum. It's the most amazing, fantastic gum in the whole world. And our chapter stopped there. So today we are going to go into chapter 21 called Goodbye, Violet. Let's see what happens. This gum, Mr. Wonka went on, is my latest, my greatest, my most fascinating invention. It's a chewing gum meal. That little strip of gum laying there is a whole 3-course dinner all by itself. "What sort of nonsense is this?" said one of the fathers. "My dear sir," cried Mr. Wonka, "when I start selling this gum in the shops, it will change everything. It will be the end of all kitchens and all cooking. There will be no more shopping to do, no more buying of meat and groceries. There will be no knives and forks at meal times, no plates, no washing up, no garbage, no mess, just a little strip of Wonka's magic chewing gum, and that's all you'll need at breakfast, lunch, and supper. This piece of gum I've just made happens to be tomato soup, roast beef, and blueberry pie. Doesn't that sound delicious? But you can have just about anything that you want." "What do you mean it's tomato soup, roast beef, and blueberry pie?" asked Violet Beauregard. "Well, if you were to start chewing it," said Mr. Wonka, "then that's exactly what you would get on the menu. It's absolutely amazing. You can actually feel the food going down your throat into your tummy, and you can taste it perfectly, and it fills you up, it satisfies you, it's terrific." "It's utterly impossible," said Veruca Salt. "Just so long as it's gum," shouted Violet Beauregard. "Just so long as it's a piece of gum and I can chew it, then that's for me." And quickly, she took her own world record piece of chewing gum out of her mouth and stuck it behind her left ear. "Come on, Mr. Wonka," she said. "Hand over this magic gum of yours, and we'll see if this thing works." Now remember, before they went into the inventing room, Mr. Wonka said, no touching and no tasting. Keep that in mind. "Now, Violet," said Miss Beauregard, her mother, "don't do anything silly, Violet." "I want the gum," Violet said ostentatiously. "What's so silly?" "I would rather you didn't take it," Mr. Wonka told her gently. "You see, I haven't gotten it quite right yet. There's still 1 or 2 things—" "Oh, to blazes with that," said Violet, and suddenly, before Mr. Wonka could stop her, she shot out her hand and grabbed the stick of gum out of the little drawer and popped it into her mouth. At once, her huge, well-trained jaws started chewing away on it like a pair of tongs. "Don't!" said Mr. Wonka. Fabulous!" shouted Violet. "It's tomato soup. It's hot and creamy and delicious. I can feel it running down my throat." "Stop!" said Mr. Wonka. "The gum isn't ready yet. It's not right." "Of course course it's right, said Violet. It's working beautifully. Oh my, what lovely soup this is. Spit it out, said Mr. Wonka. It's changing, shouted Violet, chewing and grinning both at the same time. The second course is coming up. It's roast beef. It's tender and juicy. Oh boy, what a flavor. The baked potato is marvelous too. It's got a crispy skin and it's all filled with butter inside. But how interesting, Violet, said Mrs. Beauregard. You are a clever girl. Keep chewing, baby, said Mr. Beauregard. Keep right on chewing. This is a great day for the Beauregards. Our little girl is the first person in the world to have a chewing gum meal. Everybody was watching Violet Beauregard as she stood there chewing this extraordinary gum. Little Charlie Bucket was staring at her, absolutely spellbound, watching her huge rubbery lips as they pressed and unpressed with the chewing. And Grandpa Joe stood beside him, gaping at the girl. Mr. Wonka was wringing his hands and saying, No. It wasn't ready for eating yet. It isn't right. You mustn't do it. Oh, blueberry pie and cream, shouted Violet. Here it comes. Oh my, it's perfect. It's beautiful. It's exactly as though I'm swallowing it. It's as though I'm chewing and swallowing great big spoonfuls of the most marvelous blueberry pie in the world. Good heavens, girl, shrieked Mrs. Beauregard, suddenly staring at Violet. What's happening to the end of your nose? Oh, be quiet, Mother. Let me finish, said Violet. It's turning blue, screamed Mrs. Beauregard. Your nose is turning blue as a blueberry. Your mother is right, shouted Mr. Beauregard. Your whole nose has gone purple. Your mother is right. What do you mean? Said Violet, still chewing away. Your cheeks, screamed Mrs. Beauregard. They're turning blue as well. So is your chin. Your whole face is turning blue. Spit that gum out at once, ordered Mr. Beauregard. Mercy save us, yelled Mrs. Beauregard. This girl's going to turn blue and purple all over. Even her hair is changing color. Violet, you're turning violet, Violet. What is happening to you? I told you I hadn't gotten it quite right, said Mr. Wonka, shaking his head sadly. I'll say you haven't, cried Mrs. Beauregard. Just look at the girl now. Everybody was staring at Violet, and what a terrible, peculiar sight she was. Look, here's Violet. She's swelling up and turning purple. Now, what about the gum? Did Mr. Wonka not have quite right? What food did the gum have that would do this to Violet? Do you have an idea? I do. I don't think it was the tomato soup. Her face and hands and legs and neck, in fact the skin all over her body as well as her great big mop of curly hair, had turned a brilliant purplish blue, the color of blueberry juice. It always goes wrong when it comes to the dessert, sighed Mr. Wonka. It's the blueberry pie that does it, but I'll get it right one day. You wait and see. Violet, screamed Mrs. Beauregard, you're swelling up. I feel sick, Violet said. You're swelling up, screamed Mrs. Beauregard again. I feel most peculiar, gasped Violet. I'm not surprised, said Mr. Beauregard. Great heavens, girl, screeched Mrs. Beauregard. You're blowing up like a balloon. More like a blueberry, said Mr. Wonka. Call a doctor, shouted Mr. Beauregard. Prick her with a pen, said one of the other fathers. So if you were to prick her, do you think she would pop? Would the juice come out? Sounds like a reasonable thing to do, but it might hurt Violet, so maybe not the smartest idea. Save her, cried Mrs. Beauregard, wringing her hands. But there was no saving her now. Her body was swelling up and changing shape at such a rate that within a minute it had turned into nothing less than an enormous round blue ball, a gigantic blueberry, in fact, and all that remained of Violet Beauregard herself was a tiny pair of legs and a tiny pair of arms sticking out of a great round fruit with a little head on the top. "It always happens like that," sighed Mr. Wonka. "I've tried it 20 times in the testing room." And every one of the Oompa Loompas finished up as a blueberry. "It's most annoying. I just can't understand it." "But I don't want a blueberry for a daughter," yelled Mrs. Beauregard. "Put her back to what she was this instant." Mr. Wonka clicked his fingers, and 10 Oompa Loompas appeared immediately at his side. Not one this time like Augustus, but 10. "Roll Miss Beauregard onto the boat," he said to them, "and take her along to the juicing room at once." "The juicing room?" cried Mrs. Beauregard. "What are they going to do to her there?" "We'll squeeze her," said Mr. Wonka. "We've got to squeeze the juice out of her immediately. After that, we'll just have to see how she comes out. But don't worry, my dear Mrs. Beauregard. We'll get her repaired if it's the last thing we do. I'm sorry about all of it. I really am." Already the 10 Oompa Loompas were rolling the enormous blueberry across the floor of the inventing room toward the door that led to the chocolate river where the boat was waiting. Mr. and Mrs. Beauregard hurried after them. The rest of the party, including little Charlie Bucket and Grandpa Joe, stood absolutely still and watched them go. "Listen," whispered Charlie. "Listen, Grandpa. The Oompa Loompas in the boat outside are starting to sing." Now, I do feel bad for Violet. Do you feel bad for her? That is a terrible thing to happen. However, one of the rules before they ever went in the room was no tasting. Did Violet follow that rule? She chose to take that gum and to start chewing. And even though Mr. Wonka kept telling her to stop, spit it out, did she listen? No, he knew that this would probably happen. Sometimes when you don't follow directions or the rules, bad things can often happen. Are you ready for the Oompa Loompa song about Violet Beauregard? Now, the last one they sang about Augustus wasn't very nice about Augustus. So let's see what they have to sing about Violet. The voices, 100 of them singing together, came loud and clear into the room. "Dear friends, we surely all agree there's almost nothing worse to see than some repulsive little bum who's always chewing gum. It's very near as bad as those who sit around and pick their nose. So please believe us when we say that chewing gum will never pay. This sticky habit's bound to send the chewer to a sticky end. Did any of you ever know a person called Miss Bigelow? This dreadful woman saw no wrong in chewing all day long. She chewed while bathing in the tub. She chewed while dancing at her club. She chewed in church and on the bus. It really was quite ludicrous. And when she couldn't find her gum, she chewed up the linoleum, or anything that happened near, a pair of boots, the postman's ear, or other people's underclothes, and once she chewed her boyfriend's nose. She went on chewing till at last her chewing muscles grew so vast that from her face her giant chin stuck out just like a violin. For years and years she chewed away, consuming 50 bits a day, until one summer's eve, alas, a horrid business came to pass. Miss Bigelow went late to bed. For half an hour she lay and read, chewing all the while, like some great clockwork crocodile. At last she put her gum away upon a special little tray, and settled back and went to sleep. She managed this by counting sheep. But now how strange, although she slept, those massive jaws of her kept on chewing through the night, even with nothing there to bite. They were, you see, in such a groove, they positively had to move. And very grim it was to hear in pitchy darkness, loud and clear, the sleeping woman's great big trap, opening and shutting, snap, snap, snap. Faster and faster, chop, chop, chop. The noise went on, it wouldn't stop, until at last her jaws decide to pause and open extra wide. And with the most tremendous chew, they bit the lady's tongue in two. Thereafter, just from chewing gum, Miss Bigelow was always dumb and spent her life shut up in some disgusting sanatorium. And that is why we'll try so hard to save Miss Violet Beauregard from suffering an equal fate. She's still quite young, it's not too late. Provided she survives the cure, we hope she does. We can't be sure. And that is the end of Goodbye, Violet, chapter 21. So, in our story, the Oompa Loompas were singing a song about Violet, and they were telling a story about a lady who, because she chewed so much, her jaws in her sleep did not stop chewing. Now, it is a song. It is quite silly. I would imagine that it was probably made up, but it shows that maybe chewing gum all day long is probably not the smartest thing. That is what has gotten Violet into this pickle, because she is so used to chewing gum that when she got a chance to try something new, she wasn't able to listen to the rules, or when people told her to stop, she simply did it anyway, and now she has to go to the juicing room and get squeezed. Would you want to go get squeezed in the juicing room? Probably not. That does not sound like a fun activity. So, of our 5 golden ticket winners, Augustus is being looked for in the fudge room. Violet is off to the juicing room because she broke the no tasting rule in the inventing room. We have 3 friends left. We have Charlie Bucket, we have Veruca Salt, and we have Mikey TV. So, our next chapter is called Along the Corridor. Now remember, corridor means a long hallway. They ran down a lot of those at the beginning of the story. Because who is in the boat right now? Do you remember? That's right, they rolled Violet into the boat. So can they travel by boat anymore to the next room? They're going to have to use their feet to get to their next destination. So they will be leaving the inventing room and headed somewhere else along the corridor the next time we come together. Now, do you think Violet will be okay? What do you think is happening to Augustus all this time that they've been down the Chocolate River and in the inventing room? Do you think that they have found him in the fudge room? All right, go find someone in your house today and tell them what happened to Violet, what kind of trouble she's in, and how she got herself there. Silly girl. And think about, where are we going to go next? We've been to the chocolate room. We've been to the inventing room. What could be better than that? I guess we'll have to wait and see next time. Thank you so much for joining me for our chapter in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and I hope that you will come back again soon. All right, take care. Bye.